Welcome back to the channel, everyone coin collectors and treasure hunters. Today, we are taking a very close look at a United States, who loves searching through old coins for something special. Coin number 1. This 1997 with a P mint mark, described as being in brown condition, and we are discussing the claimed market value of $75. Zeroth. At first glance, a 1997 Jefferson Nickel may look like an ordinary 5-cent coin that could easily be overlooked in pocket change, an old collection, or a box of accumulated coins. But this is exactly why coin collecting can be so fascinating. Sometimes, the most interesting discoveries begin with a coin that looks completely ordinary. Before we get into the exciting possibility of a 5-figure valuation, however, it is important to understand what actually determines the value of a coin, and why a dramatic price claim should always be verified through professional grading and documented sales. The 1997 Jefferson Nickel is part of the long-running Jefferson Nickel series that began in 1938. The coin features Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home, on the reverse. Designed by Felix Schlag, the Jefferson Nickel became one of the most recognizable American circulating coins of the 20th century. The 1997 Philadelphia issue carries the P Mint mark, identifying it as a coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint. According to available numismatic references, the 1997 P issue had a very large circulation mintage of approximately 470,972,000 pieces, meaning the date and mint combination itself is not rare. That fact is extremely important because it tells us that simply finding a 1997 with P Jefferson Nickel does not automatically make it a rare or valuable coin. In ordinary circulated condition, this is generally a common coin. Current published price information places typical examples far below extraordinary 5-figure prices, and recent sales data also show ordinary 1997 with P nickels selling for only a few dollars or less, depending on condition. So why do some Jefferson Nickels bring dramatically higher prices than ordinary examples? The answer usually involves a combination of condition, strike quality, full steps details, varieties, errors, unusual finishes, certification, and rarity. For Jefferson Nickels, one of the most important characteristics that advanced collectors examine is the area of Monticello's steps on the reverse. When the steps are sharply struck and uninterrupted, the coin may qualify for a designation such as full steps, commonly abbreviated FS. Strong full steps can make a major difference in the market for high-grade Jefferson Nickels. This is particularly important for modern Jefferson Nickels, because many examples were produced in enormous quantities, but only a much smaller number may survive with exceptional surfaces and exceptionally sharp strikes. A coin can therefore be common by mintage, but scarce in a particular top grade, or with a particularly desirable strike characteristic. That distinction is one of the most important lessons for anyone beginning to study modern U.S. coins. Professional grading is also extremely important. A collector looking at a raw coin under normal household lighting may think it is nearly perfect, while a professional grader may identify contact marks, hairlines, weak strike characteristics, spots, environmental damage, or other issues that dramatically affect the grade. Conversely, a truly exceptional coin can sometimes be worth much more than a typical example when it receives a very high certified grade. There is another fascinating side to the 1997 with P issue that collectors should know about. The Philadelphia Mint produced a special matte finish specimen or special strike version in 1997. These pieces are different from ordinary circulation strike nickels and are particularly interesting to collectors. Available sales records show certified examples of the 1997 with P specimen issue in very high grades selling for hundreds of dollars rather than ordinary face value. For example, documented sales include SP69 and SP70 examples in the range of roughly $80 to nearly $500, depending on the specific coin, grade, designation, and marketplace. This special issue is a perfect example of why identification is so important. Two coins can both say 1997 and P and still have completely different collecting characteristics. One might be an ordinary circulation strike, while another could be a special specimen with a matte finish. If a collector discovers an unusual-looking 1997 with VP nickel, it is worth examining carefully rather than assuming that the color alone explains its value. That does not mean collectors should ignore a remarkable 1997 with P nickel. Quite the opposite. If your coin appears unusual, has an exceptionally sharp strike, unusual surfaces, a possible mint error, a recognized variety, or characteristics that differ from standard examples, it deserves closer examination. A potentially rare coin should be evaluated on evidence rather than on an advertised number. One of the first things you should do is inspect the obverse. Look carefully at Jefferson's portrait. Examine the hair, cheek, jawline, and the surrounding fields. On a high-grade coin, the fields should be relatively clean, with minimal contact marks. Look around the lettering, especially Liberty and In God We Trust, and inspect the date, 1997. Any unusual doubling, missing details, die cracks, die breaks, or other anomalies should be documented with clear photographs and compared against known varieties. Next, turn the coin over and study the reverse. Monticello is the central focus. Examine the building, columns, dome, lettering, and especially the steps. The steps can provide valuable information about strike quality. A weakly struck coin may show incomplete or blurry steps, while a particularly sharp example can display much stronger detail. Collectors interested in full steps, Jefferson Nickels, should pay especially close attention to this area. The mint mark is another feature to verify. On a 1997 with P. Jefferson Nickel, the P identifies Philadelphia. The mint mark should be located on the reverse near Monticello. Make sure the coin you're examining actually has the P mint mark and is not a 1997 with D or another issue. Accurate identification is the foundation of every serious coin valuation. Another thing to consider is whether the coin has been cleaned. This is extremely important. A person may see a dark or brown coin and believe that its unusual appearance makes it rare. But if the coin has been chemically cleaned, polished, scratched, or otherwise altered, professional collectors may consider it damaged or impaired. Cleaning can remove the original surface and significantly affect desirability. Natural toning and environmental discoloration should also be distinguished. Toning can sometimes be attractive and collectible, but not every color on a coin is desirable toning. Brown, dark, greenish, reddish, or other unusual colors can sometimes result from environmental exposure. If you find a coin with unusual coloration, do not immediately clean it. Cleaning a potentially collectible coin can permanently damage its numismatic value. The condition described as brown deserves particular attention. In standard coin grading terminology, collectors generally focus on grades such as good, fine, very fine, extremely fine about uncirculated, and mint state for circulation strikes. Brown is not itself a grade that establishes a specific value. It is more of a description of the coin's appearance. Therefore, a brown 1997p nickel could be worth a small amount, a modest premium, or more if additional characteristics make it desirable. The color alone does not determine the price. Let's imagine you discover this coin in an old jar. You pull it out and notice the date is 1997 and the reverse has a P mint mark. The coin has a brownish appearance and the details look unusually sharp. What should you do? First, don't clean it. Second, take clear photographs of both sides. Third, examine the Monticello steps under magnification. Fourth, check for obvious errors or varieties. Fifth, compare it with authenticated examples. And finally, if you believe it has significant potential, submit it to a reputable grading service or have it examined by an experienced numismatist. A magnifying glass can be useful, but collectors should avoid over-interpreting tiny marks. Every circulating coin accumulates scratches, dents, contact marks, and manufacturing characteristics. Something that looks like doubling may simply be machine doubling or damage. Something that looks like an error may be post-mint damage. Proper attribution requires comparison with known die varieties and recognized error characteristics. The history of the Jefferson nickel itself is another reason this series remains so popular. Thomas Jefferson was one of the central figures in early American history, and the coin's design has remained recognizable for generations. Monticello cut on the reverse gives collectors a distinctive architectural element to study. Because Jefferson Nickels have been produced for decades, the series offers collecting opportunities across many dates, mint marks, compositions, varieties, and strike characteristics. Next, coin number 2. This 2004 Jefferson Nickel with a P mint mark, described as being in very fine condition, with a claimed market value of $64.00. The 2004 Jefferson Nickel is especially interesting because this year marked an important change in the series. The United States Mint introduced the Westward Journey designs, giving collectors 2 different reverse designs during 2004. That makes the 2004 nickel a fascinating coin to study, and it also creates opportunities to find varieties, errors, unusually high-grade pieces, and special examples that can be worth substantially more than face value. That enormous production figure is one of the first things a serious collector should consider. When hundreds of millions of coins are struck, most surviving examples are not rare. But coin collecting is not simply about how many coins were produced. The real question is how many survive with a particular combination of characteristics. A coin can have a large original mintage but become scarce in an extremely high grade, with a rare error, with a dramatic variety, or with a special strike characteristic. The 2004 with P. Jefferson Nickel is especially interesting because there are actually 2 major regular issue reverse designs from Philadelphia during the year. The first is the Peace Medal design, which commemorates the peace medals associated with the Lewis and Clark expedition. The second is the keelboat design, representing the keelboat used during the expedition. These designs were part of the Mint's Westward Journey program and temporarily replaced the traditional Monticello reverse. If you are holding a 2004 with P. Jefferson Nickel, one of the first things you should do is determine which reverse design you have. Turn the coin over and study the image. If you see the Peace Medal design, you have the first 2004 reverse. If you see the keelboat, you have the second 2004 reverse. This distinction is important because the 2 issues have separate mintages and separate collecting markets. Now let's talk about the P mint mark. On these 2004 nickels, the P indicates that the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. The mint mark is part of the coin's identity, and collectors should always verify it carefully. A 2004 nickel without the P could be a different issue, while a D would indicate Denver. Correct identification is the foundation of accurate coin valuation. The 2004 with BP nickel has a standard composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, weighs approximately 5 grams, and has a diameter of about 21.2 millimeters. It is not a silver coin. This is worth emphasizing because Jefferson Nickels from the World War II period are famous for containing silver, but the 2004 issue does not have that wartime composition. The phrase very fine condition also deserves some explanation. Very fine, commonly abbreviated VF, describes a circulated coin that still retains substantial design detail but shows noticeable wear from being in circulation. On a Jefferson nickel, you would expect some smoothing of the high points of Jefferson's portrait and other raised areas. The coin may still have clear lettering and strong overall design, but it will not have the pristine surfaces associated with mint state coins. Another fascinating category involves doubled die varieties. The 2004 with P Peace Medal nickel has recognized doubled die examples, including the FS 101 variety. Auction records show examples of the doubled die variety being offered and sold, demonstrating that specialized varieties can create a completely different collecting market from ordinary coins. If you believe your 2004 with P nickel could be valuable, the first area to examine is the obverse. Look carefully at this date, 2004, the word liberty, and the lettering around Jefferson's portrait. Use magnification, but do not automatically assume that every unusual line or shadow represents doubling. Mechanical doubling, die deterioration, contact marks, scratches, and other forms of damage can easily be mistaken for a valuable variety. The date is particularly important. Examine each digit individually. Look for unusual separation, extra contours, notching, or other characteristics. If you see something that appears unusual, photograph it clearly and compare it with recognized varieties rather than relying on a general internet photograph. Next, examine the P mint mark. Verify that it is clearly present and appears in the correct location. Look for unusual shapes, doubling, or other characteristics, but again, be careful. Damage caused after the coin left the mint can sometimes create shapes that look like errors. Then move to the reverse. This is where the 2004 Jefferson Nickel becomes especially interesting. Determine whether you have the piece medal or keelboat design. Carefully inspect the entire reverse for doubled elements, die cracks, die chips, unusual lettering, clipped edges, missing details, or other anomalies. The edge should also be examined. A normal Jefferson nickel has a plain edge, so any major deformation or unusual edge characteristic deserves further attention. A clip, broad strike, off-center strike, or other mint-made error can sometimes make a coin much more interesting to collectors. One of the most important rules when examining an unusual coin is do not clean it. Never use chemicals, polish, abrasive materials, toothpaste, metal cleaner, or any other household substance to make a potentially valuable coin look brighter. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and can substantially reduce collector interest. A coin with natural toning or discoloration should generally be left alone until an expert has examined it. Even if the coin looks dark, brown, grey, or unusual, that appearance does not automatically mean it is damaged. Conversely, unusual coloration can sometimes be evidence of environmental exposure or chemical treatment. Professional evaluation is the safest approach when significant value may be involved. The difference becomes even greater when professional certification is involved. A reputable grading service can authenticate the coin, assign a grade, and identify recognized varieties or special characteristics. A certified coin has a much stronger foundation for a serious valuation than an uncertified coin accompanied by a handwritten price tag or an online claim. Collectors should also learn the difference between price guides and actual auction results. A guide may provide an estimate, while an auction record shows what a buyer actually paid under particular circumstances. Even auction prices can vary depending on the coin's grade, eye appeal, certification, timing, buyer demand, and whether the piece has a special attribution. The keelboat issue also has interesting high-grade and error examples. Current auction data include a 2004 with P keelboat MS68 PCGS example that sold for $384 in 2025, along with various error examples involving clipped planchets and improperly annealed planchets. These coins can be much more interesting to collectors than ordinary circulated examples because the unusual characteristics are part of their appeal. So if you find a 2004 with P Jefferson Nickel in very fine condition, what should you do? First, identify the reverse. Second, verify the mint mark. Third, examine the date and lettering under magnification. Fourth, inspect the reverse for recognized varieties or errors. Fifth, check whether the coin has been cleaned or damaged. And finally, if you discover something genuinely unusual, seek professional authentication. Do not rush to sell the coin simply because someone tells you it is worth tens of thousands of dollars. At the same time, do not throw away a strange-looking nickel simply because it is only 5 cents. The best approach is careful research. There is another reason the 2004 nickel is such an excellent educational coin. It represents a major moment in the history of U.S. coin design. The Westward Journey program was created to commemorate the exploration and expansion associated with the Lewis and Clark expedition. The temporary reverse designs gave collectors something new to look for in their change and helped generate renewed interest in the Jefferson Nickel series. The piece medal design is particularly symbolic because piece medals played a role in interactions between American officials and Native American nations during the era associated with Jefferson and the Lewis and Clark expedition. The keelboat design, meanwhile, recalls the transportation used during the expedition. These designs give the 2004 nickel more historical character than its 5-cent denomination might suggest. For a collector, that historical story can be just as interesting as the monetary value. Coin collecting is not only about finding a coin worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. It is also about holding a small physical object that connects you to a particular period in American history. Next coin, number 3. This 1996 Jefferson Nickel with a P mint mark, described as being in red condition, with a claimed market value of $77, zeroth. At first glance, a 1996p Jefferson Nickel may look like an ordinary 5-cent coin. But when you begin examining its date, mint mark, surface, strike quality, color and condition, you discover that there is much more to this coin than its 5-cent face value. The big question is whether an ordinary 1996p nickel can really be worth $77,000, or whether such a huge figure would require a very unusual error, variety, or exceptional certified example. The physical specifications are also straightforward. The 1996p Jefferson Nickel has a diameter of approximately 21.2 millimeters, weighs approximately 5 grams, and uses the standard copper-nickel composition of approximately 75% copper and 25% nickel. Unlike the famous wartime Jefferson Nickels of 1942 through 1945, the 1996 issue does not contain the special silver composition used during World War II. Now let's talk about the word red. When someone describes a coin as red, that can mean several different things, and collectors should be careful about what the description actually means. Jefferson Nickels are copper-nickel coins, and their surfaces can develop different appearances because of environmental exposure, storage, chemical reactions, or other factors. A reddish or coppery appearance does not automatically make a coin rare or valuable. In many cases, color alone has very little effect on the value of a circulated Jefferson nickel. For the 1996 with P issue, the condition is much more important than simply calling the coin red. Professional collectors and grading companies examine the amount of wear, surface preservation, strike quality, luster, marks, and overall eye appeal. A coin described as very fine has experienced noticeable circulation and wear. The highest value examples of modern Jefferson Nickels are usually associated with very high mint state grades, particularly coins that retain exceptional surfaces and sharp details. The 1996 with P issue does have documented mint errors. Gray sheet records, for example, include a 1996 with P Jefferson nickel double struck with the second strike off center, graded MS65 full steps by NGC, which sold for 288th. It also records a 1996 with P nickel struck on a double curved clip planchet that sold for 99th though. Coin World likewise records unusual 1996p error pieces, including double curved clips and a mated pair example. These examples show something very important. Mint errors can create premiums, but not every error automatically creates a 5-figure value. The severity of the error, rarity, condition, certification, collector demand, and documented auction history all matter. If you have a 1996 with P Jefferson Nickel, begin by carefully examining the obverse. Look at Jefferson's portrait and the surrounding fields. Pay special attention to the date 1996 and the word Liberty. Examine the lettering under magnification and look for signs of doubling. Genuine double die characteristics can be valuable, but ordinary machine doubling or post-mint damage should not be confused with a true double die. Next, examine the P-mint mark. Make sure that the mint mark is actually part of the original strike and has not been altered or damaged. Look closely for unusual doubling or other characteristics, but remember that scratches and dents can sometimes create misleading shapes. After studying the obverse, turn the coin over and carefully examine Monticello. The reverse is extremely important for Jefferson Nickel collectors because the steps beneath the building can influence desirability and value. If the steps are complete, sharp, and uninterrupted, the coin may have the potential for a full steps designation if it also meets the relevant grading standards. A full steps designation can be especially important for high-grade Jefferson Nickels because many circulation strike coins were not struck sharply enough to preserve every step. This creates a situation where a date with a huge mintage can still have relatively scarce examples in the highest grades with full steps. This is why a collector should never judge a Jefferson Nickel solely by its date and mint mark. You need to examine the grade and strike as well. Two coins can both be 1,996 with P. Jefferson Nickels, yet one might be worth only a few cents, while another certified example can be worth thousands because of its extraordinary condition and full steps designation. Now let's return to the term very fine condition. A very fine Jefferson nickel has already experienced circulation. You would expect wear on Jefferson's hair and facial features, as well as wear on the reverse design. The coin may still have strong overall detail, but it will not have the pristine surfaces expected from a high mint state specimen. That concept is sometimes called conditional rarity. A coin can be common overall but rare in a particular grade. Collectors who specialize in registry sets often compete for the finest known examples, and that competition can push prices substantially higher than the value of ordinary coins. This is also why professional grading matters. A coin that appears perfect to the naked eye may have tiny contact marks that prevent it from receiving a top grade. Conversely, a truly exceptional example can stand out because of its clean surfaces, strong strike, attractive luster, and complete details. If you discover a 1,996 with P nickel that looks unusually sharp, do not immediately assume it is worth thousands. Instead, examine the entire coin. Look for scratches, spots, hairlines, discoloration, and signs of cleaning. Check the steps on Monticello. Examine the date and lettering. Compare the coin with authenticated examples. If it still looks exceptional, consider professional grading. There is also an important historical aspect to this coin. The 1,996 Jefferson nickel was struck during the final years of the original Monticello reverse design before the United States Mint introduced the Westward Journey nickel series in 2004, that makes the 1,996 issue part of the closing period of a long chapter in Jefferson nickel history. For decades, the Jefferson nickel had carried the same basic design. Collectors could compare coins from different decades and study changes in strike quality, mint marks, varieties, and condition. By 1996, the series had already become a familiar part of American pocket change. The Philadelphia Mint's production of more than 829,001,996 with P nickels means that many examples entered circulation. Some were heavily worn, some were lost, some were saved in jars, and some were set aside by collectors. A smaller number survived in exceptional condition. That is where the treasure hunting aspect begins. When you search an old collection, you are not necessarily looking for a coin that was rare when it was made. You may be looking for a coin that is rare today because of its condition or unusual characteristics. Imagine opening an old roll of nickels and finding a 1,996 with P that has brilliant surfaces, virtually no contact marks, and incredibly sharp Monticello steps. That coin might deserve much more attention than an ordinary circulated example. It could potentially be worth a significant premium if professionally graded and attributed. If the coin appears to have a major mint error, consider sending it to a professional grading service. If it appears to be a normal circulated coin, there may be little financial reason to pay for expensive certification. Professional grading makes the most sense when the coin has a realistic possibility of being valuable enough to justify the cost. For collectors, the full steps designation is one of the most important concepts to understand with modern Jefferson nickels. Look at the horizontal lines beneath Monticello. Are they complete? Are there interruptions? Are they strong and clearly separated? Are there contact marks across the steps? These details can determine whether a coin qualifies for a valuable designation. Another important point is that a reddish appearance can sometimes indicate that the coin has been exposed to environmental conditions. If the surface looks unnatural, porous, stained, or chemically altered, collectors may consider the coin impaired. Therefore, the color should be evaluated together with the overall surface condition. A serious collector should always ask 3 questions. Is the coin authentic? Is the unusual feature mint-made? And is there documented market demand for that exact feature? These questions can prevent many costly mistakes. The first question, authenticity, is fundamental. Counterfeit and altered coins exist, and valuable coins are more likely to attract fraudulent activity. If you have a 1,996 P Jefferson nickel in your collection, take it out and inspect it carefully.